Good morning, everyone. In our previous video of A Face in the Dark by Ruskin Bond, we have done summary, title and setting of the story. And by the end of this video, you will be able to learn the theme of the story, A Face in the Dark, learn about the character Mr. Oliver of the story A Face in the Dark, and learn about the style and critical appreciation of the story A Face in the Dark. Let us read the theme. A Face in the Dark is a supernatural story, and the writer makes the supernatural look natural by his artistic skill. It is set in a pine forest outside Simla. It revolves around Mr. Oliver, an Anglo-Indian teacher. Mr. Oliver has a strange experience while he is passing through a pine forest at night. So children, A Face in the Dark is a mysterious and supernatural story. There are no witches, no ghosts. It is just the plot and magic of words that give it a supernatural aura. The story has hues of supernatural elements. Mr. Oliver, an Anglo-Indian teacher, the central character in the story, has been described as a man who was not given to nervousness or imagination. That was perhaps the reason that he had been walking through the pine forest on his way back to school from the Simla Bazaar every night for several years. He sees the figure of a boy in the light of a torch. He stops because he thinks that boys are not supposed to be out after dark. He moves closer to the figure in order to recognize him. The boy appears to be crying. It is a strange, soundless weeping. So he sees the figure of a boy sitting on a rock in the light of a torch. He moves closer to recognize him. The boy is crying, but it is a strange, soundless crying. This soundless weeping, the night time, makes the atmosphere strange and frightening. Mr. Oliver feels uneasy. He becomes tense and gets upset. He asks him why he is crying. The boy neither answers nor looks up. Mr. Oliver again asks him to look up. When he looks up, Mr. Oliver fancies that the boy has no eyes, ears, nose or mouth. It is just a round smooth head with a school cap on top of it. He gets frightened and runs towards the school building. Let us see the meanings, children. The meaning of uneasy is uncomfortable. Fancies, imagines. So Mr. Oliver gets tense and upset. He asks the boy the reason why he was crying. After repeated requests, the boy looks up. Mr. Oliver gets scared. The boy has no face. It is just a round, smooth head without any features like eyes, ears, nose or mouth. Mr. Oliver gets frightened. His torch falls from his hand. He stumbles and runs towards the school building. It is the creation of his own mind. His mind is gripped with fear. Everything there appears to be strange, mysterious, and supernatural. Mr. Oliver stumbles up to the watchman, gasping for breath. Let us see the meanings, children. Gripped means seized, and gasping means breathing heavily. So this fear and fancy is the creation of his own mind. His mind is gripped with fear. In this fear, he stumbles up to the watchman, gasping for breath. He is so frightened that he fancies that the watchman whom he meets has no eyes, no ears, no features at all, not even an eyebrow. All this makes the story supernatural. But Ruskin Bond's supernatural is neither frightening nor horrifying. So children, when the watchman finds Mr. Oliver in this panicky condition, he asks him what the matter is. As he hears the description of a boy without features, he lifts the lamp to his own face and asks if the boy's face was like his face. Mr. Oliver here imagines that the watchman's face is also featureless like the boy's. He does not even have eyebrows. All this makes the story supernatural, thus sowing seeds of fear and suspense in the minds of the readers. Let us discuss the character sketch of Mr. Oliver. Mr. Oliver is an Anglo-Indian teacher in a school near Simla. He has been teaching in the school for several years. He is a bachelor and usually strolls in the Simla Bazaar in the evening. While returning after dark, he takes a shortcut through the pine forest. He carries a torch with him. Children, let us see the meanings. Bachelor means an unmarried man, and strolls means takes a leisurely walk. So Mr. Oliver was an Anglo-Indian teacher who was teaching in a school located 3 miles away from Simla. He was a bachelor and was probably staying alone in the school premises. He used to walk down every evening to the Simla Bazaar and return after dark by taking a shortcut through the pine forest. Oliver was a courageous man who did not believe in imaginary or ghost stories, so he never felt any kind of fear while walking through the pine forest. Even at night, even at times when the weather was windy and the pine trees made sad and eerie sounds. He gets frightened when he sees a boy sitting on a rock in the narrow forest path. He fancies that the boy has no eyes, ears, nose, or mouth. It's just a round, smooth head with a school cap on top of it. It is a creation of his own mind. His mind is gripped with fear. The torch falls from his trembling hand and he runs towards the school building. He cries for help. So once while he was walking through the pine forest at night, he saw a boy sitting alone on a rock. From his school cap, Oliver could make out that he was a hostel student. He was surprised to see the boy sitting alone at the time, since the boys were forbidden to move out after dark. Oliver sensed that something was wrong, as the boy was sitting with his head hung down and holding his face in his hands. The boy was crying continuously and his body was shaking. But what made Mr. Oliver uneasy was that the boy's weeping was soundless. As a teacher, having concern for children, Oliver asked the boy why he was there at night and why he was crying. The boy did not answer. Oliver asked him again, and then the boy looked up. As the light from Oliver's torch fell on the boy's face, he was horrified to see that the boy's face was featureless. That means he did not have eyes, ears, nose, or mouth. It was actually the fancy of Mr. Oliver. The strange and mysterious experience in the forest makes him tense. He is puzzled and stumbles up to the watchman. He is so gripped with fear that he fancies that the watchman whom he meets has no eyes, no ears, no features at all, not even an eyebrow. It appears to him that he has had a supernatural experience. Stumbles means trips. So Oliver, who had never believed in anything like a ghost or a supernatural power, seemed to be in the grip of an unknown fear and ran for safety. While running from there, he is bumped into a watchman who was again featureless like the boy. That means he also did not have eyes, ears, no features at all, not even an eyebrow. It seems to Mr. Oliver that he has seen something strange. This was a supernatural experience for him. Let us discuss the style, children. The story is written in the third person, narrated by omniscient author in a simple and straightforward manner. Very apt and concrete imagery has been employed to bring out the atmosphere of supernaturalism and mystery created in the story, catering especially to the taste of the children. Omniscient means having infinite awareness and understanding. So children, the story follows the style of third person narration. It is narrated by the omniscient author in a simple and straightforward manner. The narrator has not defined the appearance and other traits of Mr. Oliver, the central character in the story. He has focused on using apt and concrete details of imagery, which is necessary for creating fear and suspense in the story. Like Mr. Oliver was a bachelor and not a nervous or imaginative man, and he used to stroll daily through the pine forest at night on his way back from the Simla market to his school. The dialogues are brief and racy, and the descriptions of the scene and setting are very graphic and artistic and intelligible. Let us see the meanings, children. Racy, full of zest and vigor. Graphic, marked by clear, lifelike or vividly realistic description. Intelligible means capable of being understood or comprehended. So children, the author has given minute details to create an atmosphere, and the descriptions and setting are artistically handled and can be easily understood. The writer has used language that helps him create an atmosphere of strangeness, mystery, and supernaturalism. The placement of words like sad, eerie sounds, shook convulsively, racked with silent sobbing, creates a strange atmosphere. The language is simple but effective in creating a supernatural atmosphere. The reader is impressed by the exactness and preciseness in the use of words. So children, the words sad, eerie sounds, shook convulsively, racked with silent sobbing create a mysterious atmosphere. The language, though easy and simple, creates a strange atmosphere. The preciseness and exactness of the words impress the readers. Let us read the critical appreciation. Supernaturalism. An atmosphere of strangeness, mystery, and supernaturalism prevails in the story. The story is set in a pine forest outside Simla. Mr. Oliver, an Anglo-Indian teacher, walks through the pine forest on his way back to school after an evening at Simla Bazaar. So children, this is a highly imaginative story, having a supernatural aura around it. The setting of a pine forest at a hill station in the dark adds to the strange atmosphere. The courage possessed by Mr. Oliver, an Anglo-Indian teacher, is evident as he walks through the forest in the dark while others avoid it. While walking through the forest path, he comes across a weeping boy who lifts his face, which is not a face but a flat something without eyes, nose, or mouth. He gets frightened and the torch falls from his hand. He turns and runs toward the school building. But on that night, he experiences a strange phenomenon. He comes across a featureless face, not once but twice. All his courage gives way to shocks. First, he meets a boy with a face without features. He is frightened beyond words. He runs, gasping, towards the school building. He stumbles up to the watchman and tells him that he had seen something horrible, a boy weeping in the forest, and he had no face. It is the creation of his own mind. He is so gripped with fear that he fancies that the watchman has no eyes, no ears, no features at all, not even an eyebrow. All this makes the story supernatural. Then Mr. Oliver meets the watchman. To his horror, he finds a repetition of the same face there. That is, no eyes, ears, mouth, or nose, not even an eyebrow. Thus, the strange nature of the plot gives the story an eerie atmosphere. Atmosphere of strangeness. In order to create an atmosphere of strangeness, the writer uses the most appropriate and suggestive words in the story. The words in the line, when there was a strong wind, the pine trees made sad, eerie sounds that kept most people to the main road, create an atmosphere of strangeness. So children, the language is supportive for the strange atmosphere, like the pine trees made sad, eerie sounds that kept most people to the main road. The boy sitting alone in the dark and the pine forest are also mysterious. The boy sitting alone on a rock in the forest at night looks strange and mysterious. The description: it had no eyes, ears, nose, or mouth. It was just a round, smooth head with a school cap on top of it, creates a strange, frightening, mysterious, and supernatural atmosphere. It, children, here refers to the figure of the boy. So the boy sitting alone in dark in the pine forest is mysterious. The featureless face with no eyes, ears, nose, or mouth, just a round smooth head with a school cap on top of it, creates a mysterious and supernatural atmosphere. Thus, this story has achieved what the author wanted. It has created a mystery and it is left unsolved. That is all for the day today, children. Now for your homework, you will read and revise the character of Mr. Oliver from the story. Thank you.